How do you begin to even try to adapt the Cosmere? With the rich diversity of each story and the depth of detail that Brandon Sanderson has provided us, how do you bring these stories to screen and give them the care and artistry they deserve? Over 19 years, not only has Sanderson reached a wide range of genres and audiences, but he's successfully contributed a good, if not cornerstone, piece of literature into each variety. With the contribution of his secret projects last year, Sanderson branched out into new corners of the Cosmere. Each of them have their own unique flavor, and they can't be summarized by the simple term epic fantasy. Some, I expect we will visit again. Some, as Sanderson has stated, are intended as standalone novels, and we may never get to see again, except in brief reference or crossover. Tracking Sanderson's path from Elantris to Sunlit, you really begin to see the depth and diversity of the Cosmere's library. Different questions he's asked, different journeys he's been on, and so graciously allowed us to join him. Pushing forwards into the mid-2020s, Dragonsteel has successfully established itself in fantasy entertainment, and Sanderson has repeatedly stated how excited he is about the prospect of adaptations for the Cosmere. But how? How do you do multiple adaptations in a universe that is so different and so diverse? In Sanderson's library, you have religious intrigues, you have political intrigues, you have 100-page character studies, you have 1,000-page character studies, you have horrors, you have pirate adventures, you have Western steampunk comedies with very bad jokes, you have live-action blockbusters, you have 10-season animated series, you have anime, you even have Tolkien showing up as himself in the middle of the Hero of Ages. Here's my wish for bringing Sanderson titles to screen in any format. In adapting the Cosmere, Sanderson needs to lean in to the diverse universe that he has created and treat each story as independent. There shouldn't be a large, multi-movie Cosmere adaptation contract. The studios that Dragonsteel chooses to sell IPs to shouldn't feel that they are creating the Cosmere cinematic universe, but rather given one title and let them completely focus and pour their talent into one story. With all the talk of a Mistborn movie lately, let's discuss what makes cinema good and what mistakes should be avoided as Dragonsteel begins to shop their stories around. Let's take, for example, 4 movies: Ocean's 11, The Princess Bride, Your Name, and Mad Max: Fury Road. All iconic masterpieces in different, independent ways. All are direct inspiration for a Cosmere book. If Cosmere Adaptations can achieve the artistic success of these movies that inspired them, only then will they meet my expectations. The bar is high, but in order to do these stories justice, the adapters will require the same mastery and craftsmanship that the original author generously gave his stories. In this list of artistic achievements, you have 4 directors and filmmakers that caught lightning in a bottle. These projects may not have set out to be cornerstones of their genres, but by lovecrafting the project that they had in front of them and enjoying the process of creating them, these filmmakers each created a magnum opus, some of the best media in the last 100 years. I want to quickly compare the Cosmere to the 2 great IPs that have done multi-decade universes before. Briefly, because the rise and fall of each of these is well documented by people much more qualified. I'm not going to be the next person in a long list to harp on Marvel's recent woes, or the start and stop nature of Star Wars under Disney. I just want to briefly observe where Marvel and Star Wars did it well, did it poorly, and what can be learned from both of these moving into the great IPs of the 2030s. Because I do truly think that is the future of the Cosmere. The MCU established itself by perfecting the superhero movie. Each of these movies were made for the same target audience, and Marvel expected their audience to see each one. But then they beat it to death over the next 15 years, waiting until most of their audience had grown up, lost interest, or were oversaturated before branching out into other genres and being brave enough to create adaptations that it was okay if they weren't for everyone. Star Wars, over a longer period of time, but with fewer titles, transitioned earlier and began to create movies and shows that it knew not everyone would like. Not every Star Wars fan watched The Clone Wars. Not every Star Wars fan watched Visions. Not every Star Wars fan watched Andor. And the creators were okay with that. I think everyone mostly agrees that each of these were net positives for the brand of Star Wars, but they were for vastly different reasons and audiences. Returning to Sanderson, Dragonsteel needs to keep the Cosmere separate. Mistborn should be adapted in dark, gritty, violent, action-based blockbusters. Tress needs to be full of whimsy, adventure, innocence, and joy. Yumi fits perfectly into a highly stylized anime indie film. Stormlight needs the character-driven, detail-oriented story of a long, epic grind. Give Six of the Dusk to a young, ambitious, independent animator on YouTube. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, I never want to hear the term Cosmere movie in the way that superhero movie is used today. Each Cosmere story deserves to be unique, standalone, enjoyed independently. In 10 years, when people are making video essays on Cosmere media, I want them to be poring over the rich storytelling of the adaptation, or how the adaptation achieved and innovated, or how it was brave and unique. I want the discussion to be less about how X change in Y adaptation will impact the Cosmere, or how the same studio would adapt both Tress of the Emerald Sea and the Sunlit Man. One thing that Star Wars has excelled at over the past 10 years is individuality. I can watch The Mandalorian, enjoy it, and move on, without feeling inclined to watch everything that's been released that canonically predates it. The Cosmere does the same. At no point for any Cosmere adaptation should I have homework before I can enjoy it on screen. I want to be able to sit down and watch Stormlight without having to watch Warbreaker, or Elantris, or White Sand. The biggest issue I see with keeping adaptations so individual is, well, what about when X character shows up in Y story? If they're completely individual from each other, how will we get characters over to other stories? Here comes my hot take. I don't care when the same character is adapted multiple different ways by different people. Heck, I even say I think it's a good thing when the same character is different across multiple media sources. Extremely minor spoilers for Cosmere books incoming. When Hoyd shows up in different adaptations, I would love to A, not immediately recognize him and need to figure it out, and B, see different adaptations of him across multiple mediums, even varying in character, caring about different things at different times. This goes for any character that may show up in not their own book. As Dragonsteel looks to sell rights, I would even go as far to say that they shouldn't sell multiple movies in the same series to the same studio at the same time. Give a studio The Way of Kings. If it works out, great. They can have the next one. If it doesn't, great. Give either Words of Radiance to someone else, or if the original really sucked, go back to The Way of Kings and give that to someone else. At the end of the day, all I am hoping for is detailed, careful, fun contributions to the Cosmere through adaptation. I am not expecting them to be as good as Sanderson's books. As excited as I am about the prospect of Cosmere adaptations, I would argue that we already have the best mediums that these stories can be told in our hands already. The way Sanderson and his team imagined them and delivered them. All I ask is that the adaptations stand alone, each on their own, as good stories to tell. Hi everyone, thanks for watching. This was my first attempt at a video essay for this channel. I have a few more topics bouncing around in my head for essays like this, so if you'd like to see more, please let me know down below. I enjoyed this immensely, and I want to get better at creating video essays. So if you have a topic you'd like me to speak to, let me know that as well. See you next time.